Okay, welcome once again. And I would like to introduce now the presenter in this webinar. We are here with Lucy Griffith. She is the co-creator of I-LINC Friends. I'm sure she will tell more about it, but just a very short introduction. The I-LINC Friends is just a series of adventure stories, and they feature several key characteristics which are important for enterprising mindsets. These characteristics are called Enterprise X. And now I would like to give the word to Lucy, while I'm also muting some participants. Lucy, you have the word. I will pass to you now the presentable so that you can go through the presentation. And if you have any troubles, please let me know. You can also turn on your camera in case you have one, so that participants can see you. But if not, that's also okay with us.
Okay, hello everyone. Hello, thanks for coming along today, and hello wherever you are. My name's Lucy Griffith, and as you heard, I'm one of the co-creators of the I-LINC Friends series of stories. So what we're going to do today, I'm just trying to connect the presentation there, hopefully you can see it. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how we developed the project and the background to it in terms of approaching teaching entrepreneurship to the really youngest learners that you can engage with. So what we're going to cover, I'm getting a little bit of background noise, so if you could mute microphones, that would be great. We're going to cover why we developed I-LINC Friends and the Enterprise Eggs, a little bit about how we approach this challenge of working with really, really young children, and we're talking about children from the ages of 2 to 7 really for the target audience that we designed I-LINC Friends for. What we created, how it's worked in practice with teachers in classrooms here in Wales. I'm based in Wales in the UK, and what we learned from it. And I'd really like to hear your questions and comments on it at the end. So I think we'll be about half an hour running through the presentation, and then you'll have a chance to ask some questions, which the guys will facilitate. So a little bit of background. I come from an education background. I was a lecturer at the university, and one of the things that I saw were lots of students coming through an education system that didn't necessarily encourage enterprising characteristics from a really young age. And we at the university were trying to support enterprise and entrepreneurship, but one of the questions that we started to ask ourselves was, what if you started earlier? What if you started with really young children to embed those things from a really young age? What could be achieved then in terms of what they did later on in their careers? So the questions that you see on screen were some of the things that myself and my colleague Chris Thomas, who co-founded We Are Lucky and developed I-LINC Friends with me, were starting to ask ourselves. So what if we started earlier? How early could you start teaching these things? What aspects of entrepreneurship could really young learners engage with? What sorts of things would engage them with it? And how could this work in the context of the wider education system? So those were the questions we were asking. Now, Chris and I both come from a background where we have used design thinking principles and design processes in a lot of our work. So we approached this from a design thinking perspective. What you see on screen here is IDEO's design process. the idea, and I'm sure many of you will be familiar with design thinking, but what it does is it gives you a framework that allows you to tackle really complex problems that potentially have multiple possible solutions. So we went through that divergent phase first of trying to really understand this question, the questions that we'd asked ourselves, by talking to teachers, by talking to parents, to young people, by looking at all the work that was going on out there in this field and really immersing ourselves in what this was all about and how we could address it. So we did this research process, and it really helped us refine what we were seeking to do. And what you see on screen now are what we ended up with in terms of a bit of a tighter brief in terms of what we wanted to develop. So we wanted to support the development of young children to grow up with that self-starting, enterprising approach to life. And we wanted to see if we could create a series of resources and tools that would help teachers and families develop some of the key aspects of the enterprising mindset from the earliest years. So things like teamwork, resilience, confidence to take managed risks, many of the things that you guys will be familiar with from working with the Entrepreneurship framework, which hadn't been published at the time that we were developing these books, but you will see that there are many similarities between the things that we were targeting and some of the things that you see in the Entrepreneurship framework. And we also wanted to create something that would integrate really seamlessly with what teachers were already doing. You know, there's a debate about whether enterprise and entrepreneurship should be something that is a part of a curriculum, a separate part of a curriculum, or whether it's something that's embedded and integrated. And the work that we did in researching really brought home to us that it was hugely important that this could be integrated with things that teachers were already doing, so that it didn't come as an extra piece of work and add on to their workload, and that actually the things that we're talking about in terms of enterprise and entrepreneurship are hugely valuable in terms of student and learner outcomes across the core curriculum itself. So those three things were our kind of targets in terms of what we wanted to achieve with developing I-LINC Friends. And, you know, as with any design process, you also need a little bit of creative, out-of-the-box thinking. And for Chris and I, this was our relationship with several islands off the Pembrokeshire coast here in Wales. This may seem a little bit of a random connection, but there are a couple of islands off the coast here where there are seabird colonies, and I'm from that part of Wales, and we visited these islands on a regular basis. And one of the things that we observed there was how entrepreneurial nature actually is. And we came to the conclusion that nature is actually a really good example of entrepreneurship in action. So natural species have to be adaptable, they have to be resilient, they have to work together in certain environments. And this got us thinking about whether we could use nature as an example to teach entrepreneurship and enterprise. We also, in terms of working with kids and observing what they engage with, realised that characters are hugely attractive and engaging to really young children. And putting these things together, we came up with a character-led approach. And this slide seems to have flipped on its side a little bit. But the I-LINC Friends books were developed around the characters that we found on those islands off the coast of West Wales. So our lead character is this little guy called Puffin Pal. I've actually got my Puffin Pal puppet here. I don't know if you can see him saying hello. So he is the lead character in our stories, and we started working on a series of children's adventure stories featuring Puffin Pal and his friends, each of which embedded and demonstrated entrepreneurial characteristics in action. So we developed 6 stories, each featuring these characters engaging in a range of different adventures that each demonstrated some of those things that we wanted to teach and wanted to support teachers in working with their children on. We did quite extensive prototyping, testing. It was an iterative process to develop these, but we eventually did a Kickstarter which enabled us to publish the books. But we didn't just want to create stories that demonstrated entrepreneurial characteristics. We wanted to add into that a range of resources that would support teachers to apply those things. And that's where the Enterprise Eggs framework came in. Of course, our books were based around birds and creatures and eggs as symbols of growth and new life. We felt were made a really strong connection. But we also wanted a framework that was really, really simple for young children to understand. So that meant using simple language. It meant using imagery that was simple and easy to understand. It meant using a multi-sensory approach. So we developed songs, video, the puppets, and so on to go along with this framework to help the children understand it. So you can see on screen there are 7 eggs that we created. Be positive, think big, work together, create it, have a go, keep going, and nurture nature. I know that there's a lot out there in terms of embedding creativity and teamwork into teaching at primary level, and increasingly things about resilience and persistence. But we wanted to create something that allowed teachers to overlay this onto the curriculum. So whatever else they were teaching, they could speak to children about these elements and show that they're valued alongside their other kinds of work. So not just valuing the outcomes of their work, valuing the process that they go through and some of the characteristics and behaviours that they showed as they created their work. So if they were persistent, then recognising that, so the children themselves recognised that this was something that those around them valued, not just what they produced at the end of the day. So each of the I-LINC Friends books links to a number of the Enterprise eggs. I'm not sure if you can see there on the back of the book, the eggs that it links to are shown. So people using the books know which eggs are demonstrated in this story, and can draw those themes out. We did a pilot project with a number of schools here in Wales using the framework and the resources that go with them. Here's some of the kids who took part here. But we created, to go with the books, a whole range of resources for the teachers. So those included session plans, PowerPoint, videos, stickers, puppets, all of the things that they could use to bring this to life. And those session plans included activities that allowed the teachers to apply what the stories were showing in real situations and create activities that the children could engage with to demonstrate those characteristics and behaviours. We also made sure that the themes and elements in the books could be used to cover all of the core curriculum aspects that the teachers needed to teach here in Wales. So in Wales it was the foundation phase, and we mapped the stories against the whole curriculum for the teachers, including the literacy and numeracy frameworks that they were using. So that meant that teachers could pick this up and use it and tick all the boxes that they needed to tick in terms of their curriculum, but also overlay the enterprise and entrepreneurship element that we were adding in. So we created these packs, we created the resources, we went out to schools, and the teachers picked them up and ran with it, really. We gave them access to all of the materials that we created. We gave them also access to the images of all the characters, so they could create their own material to suit their classroom needs and the needs of their individual learners. So it was fully flexible for them as well. Here's some of the work that was created. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see the children made their own versions of the eggs. You've got some of the activities going on in the centre of the screen here. So, for example, with the first book in the series, Puffin Pal, who's the lead character, has to go on a long journey, and he has to think of nice things to keep him going. So the children in the schools would go through that same exercise of thinking about the things that would keep them going if they were going through a difficult situation. On the right-hand side here, you've got some of the islands that they created, their own versions of the islands. So this is a creativity task. But all through this ran the theme of recognising when the students were demonstrating those behaviours that weren't in other ways recognised in the curriculum. So I've put on screen here some of the things that teachers said. One of the things I'm often asked is, how do you measure whether this has been successful? And for us, it was very much a qualitative measurement process. The children who took part were aged 5 and 6, so they're in their first year of formal education here in Wales. And it certainly wasn't for us to do a formal assessment type process on them, and we didn't want to do that. But what we did was interview all of the teachers who took part in the pilot, and they were our barometer for success on the project. Many of them told us that developing those characteristics that the enterprise eggs demonstrated had a positive knock-on effect in terms of the other work that the young people were doing. And so we could really see how valuable enterprise and developing that enterprising mindset is from the really youngest children. And we were surprised ourselves at how quickly they picked up what are quite complex concepts in some ways. So we had some really positive feedback from the teachers who took part, and they're using they're continuing to use the framework after the pilot had finished, which for me is a sort of strong sign that they felt it was successful. but I've put here some of the key things that we learned. And I would say that it's fair to say that it's never too early to start in terms of thinking about behaviours and characteristics that set the tone for enterprising young people. So the children that we worked with were sort of 5 and 6, and they were picking it up and running with it. We learned that integrating with the curriculum was really crucial in terms of making this something that teachers could pick up. I don't know about you guys who are listening, but certainly the teachers that we were working with had really heavy workloads, and creating something with them that was really integrated and supported them in terms of their planning and all of the other things that they had to cover was hugely important. Allowing teachers to tailor the material to their learners was also a key aspect of the success here. Every classroom is different, every child is different, and teachers really embraced the fact that they had the ability to tailor the activities and create their own versions. And we provided a framework, and they built on top of that. Keys to engagement from the children were using really clear language, images and symbols. I can't stress enough how powerful having stories and narrative elements were in making this successful. The children really seemed to sort of love the fact that there were characters and stories that they could engage with, and people and characters that they could identify with as well. Yes, they were creatures, they were animals, but they seemed to get a really positive feeling about engaging with the characters. We also added in music and video, so creating a song that helped the children introduce themselves into the I-LINC Friends world, and creating a video that showed the enterprise eggs in action, if you like, were really, really helpful. And the children made up their own sort of signs and symbols for each of the eggs as well. So they made sort of hand signals for the different ones. And again, this is all part of reinforcing the kind of understanding and absorption of this, and rewarding behaviours and skills, so process, not just outcomes. A lot of teachers, the teachers told us that this helped them with things like motivating students who found certain subjects really, really difficult, but who could still get an element of recognition for the process that they went through for trying and continuing, keeping going and learning. So we learned a huge amount from doing this. It's certainly not perfect. We know we've got a long way to go, but we, I suppose the take home for me is that you can start with really young children. They will take it up and run with it. And what we've created is one way that you could approach teaching the youngest children entrepreneurship. I think I'm not too far off my half an hour. Do we have questions?
Great timing. Thank you very much, Lucy.
No problem.
Actually, we have a lot of questions coming in. Yeah, I mean, the idea in the project is extremely interesting, and I see that there is a lot of interest from the participants to learn more about this and to actually read these stories and books. And starting with this, some participants asked already whether these books are available, and also are they only in English? Are there any translations, or have you considered any translations in the future?
At present, we have all 6 books in English. We have done some Welsh translation, but that's the only language so far. So we've got 1 book so far in Welsh. We're hoping to do some animated versions as well, because we think that will enhance what the children get out of it. We would love to do further translations. I think from our perspective, it's a matter of understanding where there would be demand for that, you know?
Yes, I'm sure there would be plenty of demand from all over Europe, judging from what the teachers write in the chat right now. Just to be clear, are these books available to read online, or there is a specific requirement to?
They're not published online. They are physical published books. So we don't have ebook versions as yet. But again, if that's something that we think people would like, then we'd certainly look into that. You can order the books from our website. You can order the hard copy books from islandfriends.co.uk. So they are out there and available to buy as hardbacks.
Okay, great. We will share the links later, so that if there's anyone interested, they can just go to the website and order them. We had a positive, very nice remarks from some participants about the fact that they really like the connection between the nature and entrepreneurship. And there is one question related to the introduction of ethical dilemmas in these stories. Is it possible? Can one present an ethical dilemma within these stories, or not really?
Well, yes, I think there's quite a good example of that in book 6, which is called Buzz Off, Puff and Pow, and it approaches the issue of sustainability, and it does ask a little bit of an ethical question, because in it Puffin Powell starts to use up some scarce resources that has an impact on some other people that are living nearby, the bees. So it does raise an ethical question there about use of natural resources, supply chain sustainability, and those things. And so yes, I think is the answer. You can ask ethical questions around entrepreneurship, and I think the stories are a really good way of framing those.
Okay, that's great news for, I think it was Chantel who asked this question, so I hope she received an answer. There was one question, because a lot of the participants to the MOOC are actually secondary school teachers. And we have a question in the chat regarding that. Can this pattern or the stories be adapted to secondary school classroom, in your opinion?
We've spoken to a number of secondary school teachers about this, and I think the framework, the Enterprise Eggs framework, certainly does have potential for older age groups than we've targeted. I think the books themselves are clearly for a younger audience, but I think the eggs you could take up to secondary level, perhaps the first few years of secondary.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just following the long line of the chat. We already have some interest in translating the books in Ukrainian, just for your information.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, we had a question regarding the participation of kids and students in the creation of the stories. Was that the case, or there were no kids involved in the creation process?
Yeah, there were kids involved in the creation process. We worked with a number of schools throughout the process, but also lots of children around us that we got to feed in on the stories and the characters as we developed them. So yes, we certainly did involve children in it. And I think one of the things that has been really exciting to see is asking children to create their own Island Friends stories and some of the things that they've come up with. And we'd actually like to take some of the things that the children have created and create books from them as well. And there's some fantastic ideas that they came up with.
That's a great idea. I'm sure it was a exciting creative process for them doing that and participating. We have very positive comments so far. We have a comment from Antigone, who is saying that if you treat your enterprise like you treat nature, there is no way you can fail. And I think that's a very nice, nice sentence. We have a question from Paula asking about the idea and how did all this start. I'm not sure whether she was here in the beginning. But if you can just briefly repeat, maybe she joined later and she didn't hear.
Yes, sure. From one perspective, I was working at a university, and we saw lots of young people coming through who we felt maybe, okay, if they'd started earlier in terms of thinking about enterprise and entrepreneurship, what could they have achieved? And that got us asking, okay, how early could you start this stuff? And added to that, the inspiration that myself and my co-creator Chris got from visiting seabird colonies off the Pembrokeshire coast, which seems like an odd combination, I know, but we saw how entrepreneurial nature had to be, and it just seemed like a really natural fit.
Yes, indeed, it seems to me as well, like a very natural fit. We have a question regarding the videos. Are they available somewhere? Could people watch them? Because you mentioned that you created, as a result, some videos at the end of your presentation.
Yeah, I can share a link to the Enterprise Eggs video with you that you can share on if you'd like to do
yes,
that.
I
can share that link with
I'm
you.
Sure, yes.
Yes, we did a little animation of each of the eggs, so you see them kind of in action, and it was used as a way of introducing them into the classroom.
Okay, great. We'll share this with all the participants of the MOOC afterwards when we're sharing the presentation, the recording of the webinar. Yeah, we have an interesting question from Theodora. She's asking if you see any difference between enterprising and entrepreneurial.
Really, really interesting question, and I'm sure we could all debate what entrepreneurship and what enterprise means forever. But we did choose enterprise for the name of the eggs, the enterprise eggs, because we felt that you can be enterprising without necessarily having to be an entrepreneur. And in terms of the language that we wanted to use, we felt it was more inclusive and more appealing to everyone, the idea of being enterprising and self-starting, rather than using the word entrepreneur. So we did choose enterprise deliberately in terms of the enterprise eggs for that.
Okay, I hope Theodora is satisfied with this. Yes, we have another comment that there is an interest for translations in Romanian, so I think that you should really think about spreading the knowledge in other languages. Yes, and I think so far we don't have any other questions. Please I invite all the participants, if you have any last questions, please share them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up soon. And we have one last question from Maria Amalia, asking whether you used any specific formal curriculum, or was it a special program?
So the teachers that we worked with, they used I-LINC Friends as their theme for their whole term, and as I mentioned, we designed it so that it would enable the teachers to cover all of the curriculum elements that they would have to cover for their term's work anyway. So a lot of the teachers here would have a theme for their term, and they used I-LINC Friends as that theme. So all of their work was based around I-LINC Friends as a theme, but that applied to their literacy, to their numeracy, all of the core curriculum that they had to deliver anyway here in Wales. So we mapped it specifically to the Welsh curriculum, but I think you would find that at primary level, at the age group that we were talking about, there would be lots of crossover to other curricula in other territories.
Yes, I'm sure about this. Another question: did you create all the images and pictures?
Yes, is the answer to that one. So between myself and Chris, who created it with me, Chris is a designer by background, so he was very much able to lay up all of the books and the images and everything. All of the characters are made out of felt, so out of fabric, and so I created all of those by hand, cutting each one out and compiling them. So it was a long process, but it was a really fun, creative project just for us to do as well ourselves.
You were really immersed into the process yourself, and also fostering creativity in yourselves as well. Yes, we have a question from Carla asking whether you or the children, did any children participate in the creation of the toys and the images? I guess you.
No, we did all of those ourselves, but certainly in terms of the delivery in schools, the children created so much material. They created pictures of the puffins, they created their own enterprise eggs, they did loads and loads of stuff, which was fantastic. It was some amazing stuff that they created.
I think we have a very nice suggestion with which we can actually close this webinar. We have a suggestion from Theodora asking whether you have considered to create an online community where teachers can publish their projects based on the books and the eggs. I don't know whether this exists or you're considering it, but I think it's a very nice idea.
It is a great idea. It's not something that we have thought of. With the pilot, we gave all of the teachers access to a Google Drive where they had all the materials, and some of them uploaded their own creations to that. But I think, you know, the idea of a wider community would be great. And if anyone's got any suggestions about what that could look like, what kind of online tools we could use to create that, then I'd love to hear those.
I think you were a real inspiration, and this is really highlighted by a lot of participants, that you're an inspiring person, and your presentation was very nice, and you're really sparking some idea generation right now in the chat. We also have a suggestion from Paula saying that this could be an opportunity to adapt the books in terms of English as a foreign language for young learners, which
what a great idea.
Is also a suggestion. I would like to suggest to continue this conversation and exchange of ideas in the entrepreneurial teachers community on I-LINC, and we will create a separate thread for that, so teachers can and participants to the MOOC can actually share their ideas, because I'm sure there will be plenty more. And with this, I would like to thank you, Lucy, for joining us and for giving this very nice presentation. And I would like also to thank everyone for joining the webinar at this time. I know that you're very busy, and thank you very much for following the MOOC and doing all the activities that we have shared with you. Thank you very much once again, and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.